Part 1. Before the Empire. Long before Rome ruled the world, before the famous Greek philosophers, before the rise of great European kingdoms, there was another power, an empire so large that it stretched across deserts, mountains, and rivers. An empire that ruled millions of people, speaking different languages, following different gods, living in different worlds. For a moment in history, it was the most powerful civilization on earth. This was the Persian Empire. But here is the surprising part. This empire did not begin as a giant. It began as a small and almost forgotten tribe, a group of people living on dry land, far from the great cities of the ancient world. So how did this small tribe rise to control 3 continents? To understand that story, we must go back to the beginning, back to a time before Persia became an empire, back to a world ruled by older powers. The ancient world before Persia, more than 2,500 years ago, the world looked very different. There were no global superpowers. Instead, there were many great civilizations, each fighting for power. In the west, along the Nile River, the kingdom of Egypt had already stood for thousands of years. Its pyramids and temples showed the strength of ancient kings. In Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, powerful cities rose and fell again and again. Empires were built and destroyed. And in the mountains and valleys of Anatolia, another strong kingdom appeared. The Lydian kingdom, famous for its wealth and the first metal coins. The ancient world was full of powerful states, but it was also unstable. Kings fought wars, borders changed constantly, cities were burned and rebuilt. Power was always moving, and far to the east, beyond these famous civilizations, another people were quietly growing stronger. They were the Persians, the land of Persia. The Persians lived in a harsh land, a land of mountains, dry plains, and difficult deserts. This region is known today as Persia, in the area of modern Iran. Life there was not easy. The land was dry, farming was difficult, cities were smaller than the great capitals of Egypt or Babylon. But harsh land creates strong people. The Persian tribes learned to ride horses across long distances. They learned to survive in difficult conditions. And they learned the importance of loyalty and discipline. At first, they were not powerful rulers. In fact, they were under the control of another empire, an empire called the Median Empire. The Persians paid tribute. They followed Median kings. To the outside world, they looked like a small and unimportant people. But history often hides great changes in quiet places. Because among these Persian tribes, a new leader was about to appear. A man who would change the balance of power across the entire ancient world. A man who would unite the Persian tribes. A man whose name would soon become famous across 3 continents. His name was Cyrus the Great, and his rise would begin one of the most powerful empires in history. But the story of Cyrus is where everything truly begins. And it starts with a prophecy that terrified a king. Part 2. The Rise of Cyrus. The story of the Persian Empire truly begins with a man whose name would echo across the ancient world, Cyrus the Great. But according to ancient stories, his life began with fear. A powerful ruler of the Median Empire, King Astyages, once had a disturbing dream. In the dream, he saw a great flood coming from the body of his daughter. The flood spread across Asia and covered the entire land. The king was terrified. He asked the priests and dream interpreters to explain the meaning. Their answer frightened him even more. They told him the dream meant that the child of his daughter would one day rule over his empire. In other words, his own grandson might take his throne. To a powerful king, this was not just a strange dream, it was a warning. So Astyages made a terrible decision. When his daughter later gave birth to a baby boy, the king ordered that the child be killed. But history often changes because one person refuses to follow an order. The king gave the task to one of his trusted officers, a nobleman named Harpagus. Harpagus took the baby into the mountains, but when he looked at the child, he could not do it. Instead of killing the boy, he secretly gave the baby to a shepherd. The shepherd and his wife raised the child as their own. The boy grew up believing he was just the son of a shepherd. But even as a child, something about him seemed different. Ancient writers say that when the children in the village played games, the boy naturally became their leader. He organized them, gave orders, and punished those who disobeyed. One day during one of these games, he punished the son of a nobleman. The angry father went to the king and complained. The boy was brought before Astyages. When the king looked at the child, something felt strangely familiar. The boy showed confidence, intelligence, and courage far beyond his years. Soon the truth began to appear. The king discovered that the boy was actually his grandson, the child he had once ordered to be killed. The boy was Cyrus. At first, Astyages decided not to kill him. Instead, he sent the young Cyrus away to live among the Persians. Perhaps the king believed the danger had passed, but sometimes the smallest decisions change history forever. Years passed. Cyrus grew into a strong and intelligent leader among the Persian tribes. He understood the hardships of his people. He knew their strengths, their struggles, and their ambitions, and slowly something began to change. The Persians were no longer satisfied living under the rule of the Medes. They wanted their own destiny. At the same time, deep anger was growing inside the Median Empire. Remember the man who had once saved the baby Cyrus? Harpagus. King Astyages eventually discovered that Harpagus had disobeyed his order years earlier. The punishment was brutal. According to ancient historians, Astyages took revenge in a way so cruel that Harpagus would never forget it. From that moment on, Harpagus secretly waited for the chance to destroy the king who had humiliated him. And that chance arrived when Cyrus became a leader among the Persians. Harpagus secretly contacted Cyrus. He told him that many nobles inside the Median Empire were unhappy with Astyages. If Cyrus rebelled, they would support him. For Cyrus, this was a moment that could change everything. Rebellion against a powerful empire was incredibly dangerous. If he failed, he would lose everything: his life, his family, and his people. But if he succeeded, the Persians could become free. Around 550 BC, Cyrus made his decision. He gathered the Persian tribes and declared a rebellion against the Median Empire. War began. At first, it seemed like a hopeless fight. The Medes were stronger, richer, and more experienced. But something unexpected happened. When the two armies finally met on the battlefield, parts of the Median army refused to fight. Some soldiers even joined Cyrus. The anger inside the Median Empire had grown too strong. The battle quickly turned against King Astyages. His army collapsed. And with that moment, the balance of power in the ancient world changed forever. Cyrus captured the Median capital and took control of the empire. The Persians were no longer a small tribe under foreign rule. They had become the rulers of a powerful kingdom. And this was only the beginning, because Cyrus was not satisfied with ruling one region. He had a much larger vision, a vision that would soon create the largest empire the world had ever seen. And his next target was one of the richest kingdoms of the ancient world. A kingdom famous for its gold, its wealth, and its powerful king. The kingdom of Lydia and its ruler, the legendary Croesus. Part 3. The empire expands. After defeating the Median Empire, Cyrus the Great was no longer just a tribal leader. He had become the ruler of a powerful kingdom. But Cyrus was not a man who stopped after one victory. He understood something important about power in the ancient world. If you stopped expanding, your enemies would grow stronger, and sooner or later, they would come for you. So Cyrus began looking west. There, in the rich lands of Anatolia, stood a famous kingdom known for its wealth and gold, the kingdom of Lydia. Its ruler was the legendary king Croesus. Croesus was one of the richest men in the ancient world. His kingdom controlled important trade routes, and its cities were filled with gold and silver. Many people believed Lydia was too strong to defeat, but Croesus had heard about Cyrus, and he was worried. Instead of waiting for Persia to become stronger, Croesus made a bold decision. He attacked first. Around 547 BC, the armies of Lydia and Persia met in battle. At first, the fighting was difficult and uncertain. Neither side gained a clear victory, but Cyrus was a patient strategist. He waited, he prepared, and then he struck again. This time, the Persian army moved quickly toward the Lydian capital, the great city of Sardis. Croesus believed his city was safe. Sardis stood behind strong walls, and many thought the city could never be captured. But the impossible sometimes happens in history. According to ancient stories, a small group of Persian soldiers discovered a hidden path along the cliffs near the city walls. During the night, they climbed silently up the rocks. By morning, the Persian army had entered the city. Sardis had fallen. King Croesus was defeated. With that victory, Cyrus now controlled not only Persia and Media, but also the wealthy lands of Lydia. His empire stretched farther than ever before. But Cyrus was not finished, because the greatest prize of the ancient world still stood in his path. A legendary city known across the world for its size, its power, and its ancient history, the mighty city of Babylon. And conquering Babylon would change Cyrus from a powerful king into the ruler of one of the greatest empires in human history. Part 4. The Clash with Greece. Cyrus had built one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. Millions of people lived under his rule. Cities stretched across deserts, mountains, and rivers. But even the strongest empire faces challenges. Far to the west, small Greek city-states were rising. They were divided, often fighting each other, but fearless and clever. The Persians looked west and saw opportunity. The rich lands of Ionia called to them, but the Greeks refused to surrender. They resisted, city by city, and that resistance would spark wars that echoed through history. At Marathon, 10,000 Greeks faced a Persian army 4 times their size. The odds were impossible. The Persians advanced. The Greeks stood firm. Against all expectation, they won. Years later, Cyrus's grandson, Xerxes, led the largest Persian army the world had ever seen. The Greeks were outnumbered. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans held the Persian army for days. Every soldier knew he might die, but they fought for their homeland. At sea, the Greeks trapped the vast Persian fleet in narrow straits. Courage, strategy, and determination overcame sheer numbers and strength. Even after these defeats, the Persian Empire remained vast and strong. It stretched from Egypt to the Indus Valley. Its roads, cities, and administration were unmatched. But even the greatest empires have cracks, and soon those cracks would grow into weaknesses that no army could hide. The question was not if they would appear, but when. And when they did, the Persian Empire would face its greatest test yet. Part 5. The Hidden Weakness. The Persian Empire was enormous, millions of people, thousands of cities, lands stretching from Egypt to the Indus Valley. It seemed unshakable. Roads connected every corner. Taxes and laws reached every village. The king's word was law. But power has a secret. Every empire has cracks hidden beneath its glory. And Persia was no different. The first weakness was size. The empire was too big. Messages took weeks to travel. Orders from the king arrived late. Governors acted as they wished. Some ignored the laws. Some collected more taxes than they should. Small rebellions flared up, one after another. Each one seemed minor, but together they weakened the heart of the empire. The second weakness was culture. Persia ruled over many peoples: Greeks, Egyptians, Babylonians, Jews, and more. Each had its own language, religion, and traditions. Persia tolerated them, and at first it worked. But differences created tension. People were loyal to their cities, their gods, their customs, more than to a distant king. Unity was fragile. The third weakness was the king himself. Even a great leader like Cyrus could not live forever. His successors were not always as clever. Some were cruel, some were indecisive, some ignored warning signs, and a distant ruler cannot see everything. Small problems became big problems. And then there was greed. Wealth flowed into the empire, but the rich became richer while the poor suffered. People began to question their loyalty. Soldiers began to question orders. And trust, the most important weapon of an empire, began to fade. For centuries, Persia had survived. Its armies were strong. Its cities were magnificent. Its systems were brilliant. But now cracks appeared in every corner. Small rebellions, distrust among governors, cultural tensions. And soon these weaknesses would meet a new threat, one the empire could not easily defeat. The greatest empire the world had ever seen was still alive, but it was fragile. And history would show that even giants can fall when their foundation is weak. Part 6. The fall. For centuries, the Persian Empire had seemed unstoppable. Armies marched across deserts. Cities flourished. Trade connected distant lands. Kings ruled with power and vision. But cracks are dangerous. Small problems grew. Governors ignored orders. Rebellions flared. Cultural tensions spread. Wealth divided the people. Trust faded. Even the greatest army cannot fight the erosion of loyalty and unity. Then came a new threat from the West. Alexander the Great, a young king from Macedonia, began his conquest. His armies moved swiftly. His tactics were unlike anything the Persians had faced. Battles were lost. Cities fell. One by one, the empire's edges were broken. Babylon, once the crown jewel of Persia, opened its gates to Alexander without a fight. The people had lost faith in their kings. The empire, stretched too thin, could not defend itself. What had seemed eternal now collapsed in a few short years. The Persian Empire fell, but its story did not vanish. Its roads, systems, and ideas influenced empires for centuries to come. Its rise and fall teach us a lesson. No empire, no matter how vast, can survive without unity, wisdom, and loyalty. History repeats itself, and the lessons of Persia remain powerful even today. If you loved this journey through the rise and fall of one of the greatest empires in history, make sure to subscribe. There are more secrets, more forgotten stories, and more incredible lessons waiting for you. Stories that will change the way you see the past and the present.
Thanks! Please subscribe and like. Spin a new yarn with us every week. See you there!